So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Hiltwine, and I'm a member of the CRCF team here at CIT. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity today to talk with you about and answer any questions related to the FY2016 solicitation. We'll use our time together for a high-level overview of this round, and then jump into some more detailed information about the LOI process. At the end of my prepared remarks, I'll open this session up for Q&A. Before we get started, let me point out that all participants have been muted. That way we can avoid any background noise or feedback. Questions may be submitted at any time during or following the presentation. To do so, just expand your webinar control panel and type your question into the questions feature. I'll answer any questions during that Q&A time, and in case any are addressed during the presentation, we won't duplicate responses. Lastly, this session, as with all CRCF webinars, is being recorded. The slides will be available on our website by close of business today, and the recorded version will be available about midweek, so before the Thanksgiving holiday. CRCF in its current form began in 2011. The program is in its 7th solicitation. To date, we've made 184 awards totaling $16.5 million. This year, $3.4 million is available to award through 5 programs to for-profit technology businesses, colleges and universities, federal research facilities, and university research consortia. I'll briefly highlight the 5 programs and some of the eligibility criteria in a few minutes, but complete information is found within each set of program guidelines. This is a limited submission solicitation, and institutional submission caps exist for all of the programs. I especially want to call this out for the university faculty researchers who are participating today, as most, if not all, of Virginia colleges and universities conduct an internal competition to select those projects that will be submitted on behalf of that institution. If you are a faculty member interested in applying for funding in an eligible program, we recommend that you reach out to a staff member from your Office of Sponsored Programs for more information on their internal process. This would include their internal deadlines. CIT will hold all LOIs submitted by university researchers until a list of that institution's approved submissions are provided. All program information is available online, including the guidelines and other CRCF resources. The URL will be shown on a subsequent slide. Additionally, all submissions are handled online. Hard copies or submissions via email will not be accepted. Across all 5 programs this round, project works must primarily align with one of 5 technology sectors. They are cybersecurity, energy, information technology, specifically for work in data analytics, life sciences, and unmanned systems for air, ground, sea, or space. Some of these sectors are different from prior rounds, so please pay close attention to your project alignment, especially for those applicants considering a resubmission. I won't spend a lot of time walking through the criteria for each program, but I wanted to share some high-level information and the overall goal for each program offered this round. There are 3 programs available to the private sector in FY16. Commercialization, SBIR matching funds, and STTR matching funds. Projects under any of these programs may request and be awarded up to $50,000. Any company may submit up to 2 LOIs or applications and be funded for 2 awards in any combination among these 3 programs. The commercialization program targets for-profit technology companies with proof of concept projects in one of the 5 industry areas. Projects must have a reasonable probability of enhancing the Commonwealth's national and global competitiveness. The SBIR and STTR matching funds programs aim to accelerate the commercialization of technology already supported by a federal SBIR or STTR Phase 1 or 2 award. CRCF funding may fill the gap between phase submissions and assist with technology development activities not supported by the federal award. Prior CRCF award recipients are eligible to submit and receive an FY16 award. Projects may be a continuation of a previously funded project or may be for new work. This applies to applicants under any program. The CRCF Matching Funds Program is for Virginia's public and private colleges and universities, federal research facilities located in Virginia, or a university research consortium that includes Virginia college or university members. The goal of this program is to assist these qualified organizations commercialize a technology or to leverage other non-Commonwealth of Virginia funding designated for commercialization. Projects under the Matching Funds Program, as well as the private sector programs discussed a few moments ago, ought to be high potential and target opportunities for commercialization and economic benefit here in Virginia. CRCF projects are expected to focus on technology development work. Under the Matching Funds Program, an institution may submit up to 4 letters of intent or applications and receive up to 4 awards for a maximum of $100,000 each. Again, for this solicitation, a research center, school, department, institute, or other entity associated with a college, university, or research facility is considered under the umbrella of that organization, and an LOI or application received by CRCF from one of these entities will count as a submission of that umbrella organization. The final program offered this round is the Eminent Researcher Recruitment Program. A $250,000 award is eligible for Virginia's public universities. The goal of this program is to assist a university with the recruitment of a top researcher to the institution. Again, for any of the programs offered to our colleges and universities, researchers ought to be in touch with their offices of sponsored programs as soon as possible to learn the internal process for submitting to CRCF. CRCF's letter of intent deadline is quickly approaching. December 4th is less than 2 weeks away, so now's the time to submit those letters of intent. Submissions must be in by 5 p.m. on the 4th to be considered this round. For those applicants invited to continue in the process, applications are due by noon on Monday, February the 1st. Late submissions, again, will not be accepted. Award announcements are planned for early June 2016. Letters of intent are a required element of the CRCF application process. They help CIT to gauge potential interest and activity, as well as begin identifying subject matter experts for the review process. LOIs must be submitted using the online form. A sample LOI is available for download from CIT's website and is previewed on the next couple of slides. As you're preparing your LOI, keep in mind the intent of the CRCF program, which is the commercialization of a high-potential technology for which IP and revenue will be generated and economic outcomes are envisioned for Virginia. Every LOI, regardless of program, will have the same 14 fields, each one required. First, applicants will be asked to select the CRCF program type for which the LOI is intended. Based on that selection, applicants will be asked to confirm their organization type. You'll recall that program eligibility is based, in part, on the organization type. Program guidelines will aid you in a complete understanding of eligibility criteria. Next, you'll be asked to enter a project title and select a primary industry sector to which your project most closely aligns. The information entered here cannot be changed in the application. Project titles should be in approximately 150 characters and describe, in layman's term, the proposed project. Applicants submitting more than one LOI should provide distinct project titles and project descriptions for each submission. Project descriptions may be a maximum of 2,000 characters or approximately 1/3 of a page and should provide a high-level overview of the proposed project, also in layman's terms. We are looking for project descriptions that briefly set the stage for the work, but focus primarily on the technology development activities for which CRCF funds will be used. You are welcome to use all of the available space for this overview. The last question in this section asks for applicants to certify their eligibility, That is, confirm their organization is compliant with the eligibility criteria, as outlined in the program guidelines. Finally, letters of intent ask for the principal investigator's name and contact information and the organization's name, city, state, and tax ID number. LOIs that are intended for the SBIR or STTR matching funds programs have 3 additional required fields: the award number of the federal award that will serve as the CRCF project match, whether the award is a Phase 1 or Phase 2, and the federal agency who made the award. In a case where an applicant has submitted their proposal but not yet learned the status of their federal submission, you may enter NA in the field for award number. More detailed information about that submission is requested at the time of application. This is a sample LOI. As mentioned on an earlier slide, a PDF version is available to download from CIT's website for your convenience. The sample is only meant to give example of the fields on the online form. It is not meant for submission purposes. All LOIs must be submitted through the online form. Hard copies or forms attached through email will not be accepted. Once you complete all applicable fields on the online form, click Submit. A confirmation will appear on your screen, and an automatically generated email will be sent to you confirming receipt by CIT. Please note that it may take a little while for the online system to release the email, and it may not be instantaneous. However, if you don't receive the notification within several hours after submission, please contact the CRCF team at crcf@cit.org to ensure that it was received. You do not have to submit an LOI that has been started. On the final review screen, next to the option to submit, you'll also see an option to save only. You can click this button to save the LOI and come back and finish working at a later time. Letters of intent must be submitted to be considered before the December 4th deadline. Once an LOI is received, CIT will review and respond to applicants within 3 business days. If the LOI meets the requirements, applicants will receive an email with next step instructions. Each project invited to continue will also be assigned a unique reference number that CIT will use moving forward to identify the project. This number will be pre-populated into the application and must be used in the file naming convention for uploaded application documents. CIT reference numbers are an internal identification system developed to identify the program to which the project was submitted and the industry sector. In some cases, upon review of your LOI, the CRCF team may have questions or require clarification of the work to be conducted before approving the project for application submission. If this happens, the applicant will receive 2 emails. The first from CIT with the information that's requested, and a second, which is automatically generated with instructions to revise and resubmit the letter of intent. Complete information on the FY2016 solicitation is available via the URL on your screen. Here you'll find the sample LOI for download, a sample project budget, FAQs, and a link to register or view more recorded webinars offered this round. You'll notice in December and January, we'll offer 2 sessions each on the application process and completing the budget narrative. We invite you to participate in those sessions. From this URL will also be links to program pages where you'll be able to download guidelines, proposal and budget narrative templates, and sample applications. If at any time throughout the solicitation you have questions, my team can be reached at crcf@cit.org. This concludes the prepared portion of the webinar. I'd now like to invite any questions that you may have at this time. Again, questions can be submitted by expanding your webinar control panel and using the questions option. I'll address questions in the order they come in to the best of my ability for the benefit of all participants. If a question requires more information, I'll follow up with that individual separately at the conclusion of the session. All questions are logged. So we have a great question here about what kind of contracts are awarded, whether they're cost type or fixed price. So all of our awards are grants, and you can request the maximum award amount, which is per program. There are differences there, and be awarded up to that full amount. Disbursements are typically made in different tranches, and we would split the award cost based on progress against milestones. So we have another question here about the purpose of enhancing the Commonwealth's national and global competitiveness, and whether that refers to enhancing economic outcomes for corporations or Virginia state agencies. And really it's across the state in every capacity. So we are looking to fund those projects that are really going to be the next big thing for the state of Virginia. The idea is to start those outcomes locally and then be able to grow them nationally and even globally. But start here so that the economic benefits, the job creation, the revenue, new company formation, manufacturing, those types of things are here in the state is the ultimate goal. And the commercialization program has that specifically written into legislation as a purpose of that particular program. So we have a question regarding the SBIR Matching Funds Program, and that's that this individual had received a Phase 1 award in FY13 and currently has a Phase 2 award which started in FY14. So if you have two separate awards, you could apply for two distinct CRCF projects, one for each of the different phase projects, provided all of the other eligibility criteria is met. If you'll recall, for the SBIR and STTR matching funds programs, that may include the maximum amount of SBIR or federal awards that you have received during the life of the company. But for this particular individual, we would definitely accept two separate awards for the two phase projects. So how much focus is on developing new IP versus product development from a prototype? So CRCF's purpose is that technology development work, and that can have many different outcomes. So certainly the creation of new IP is one thing that we may be looking for, and if the work that's being conducted leads to that, that's fantastic. But if your specific project at the stage that it's in is creating that prototype and is not quite to the IP development stage, that's okay too. We track projects for 5 years after the conclusion, and that may be something that's envisioned a couple of years down the line but isn't ready just yet. So if that's the stage that your particular project is in, as long as the work that CRCF is funding at this time is to help advance that technology for commercialization, that would be acceptable. Yes, the $50,000 max is the maximum award per commercialization submission. So if you were applying for two commercialization program grants, each one could request and be funded up to $50,000, and so $100,000 from CRCF if both were awarded. All of our programs do have a required one-to-one match. So at that $50,000 level, essentially each is a $100,000 program or project, excuse me. In terms of the number of applications that can be submitted for any of our private sector programs, so that's commercialization, SBIR matching funds, and STTR matching funds, any one applicant organization may submit up to two projects for any combination under those programs. So it could be two commercialization, it could be a commercialization and an STTR, two SBIRs. It just depends on what your particular organization has, if you've received those federal awards, if you have two distinct projects that you'd be submitting for, those types of things. So if you meet all of the eligibility criteria and have the distinct projects, we certainly welcome up to two submissions under any combination for the private sector programs. And submission caps also exist for our other programs. For matching funds, which is for our universities and research organizations, the maximum amount is 4 per institution and 2 per principal investigator. For eminent researcher recruitment, it's 1 per organization. And on CIT's website, and I can, for our particular solicitation, you will have links to the particular program pages. And from those links will be the, at the bottom of the screen, the link to submit that LOI. And again, that's an entirely online process. It's a really short selection for those fields. Plug in some simple information, and then we'll be able to determine if you're eligible to submit the full program application. Again, we use that to identify the interest in the program and be able to identify early the types of subject matter experts that we would need for the review process. So under the private sector, there are no requirements for the principal investigators. A principal investigator could be the same person on both submissions if you are maximizing the two submissions for the private sector. And for the SBIR or STTR, the principal investigator for CRCF does not have to be the same principal investigator as for the federal projects. They can be different folks. Under matching funds for the universities, that would be a principal investigator could submit 2 out of the possible 4 LOIs for that institution. So we have a question about this particular applicant is a Virginia-based company and has partnered with another Virginia-based manufacturing company, and whether it would be beneficial to mention that in the LOI. Yes, so although there's a limited amount of space, those 2,000 characters, being able to mention those partnerships would be fantastic, and we would look for the application to provide a little bit more information. While it's not called out specifically, looking for those opportunities for collaboration among Virginia organizations, whether it's public and private, private and private, collaboration between different universities is something that we are looking for. So it's not a requirement, but it definitely is appreciated as we can see the extent of the reach of our Virginia group. So if you want to bring that up in your LOI, even if it's just a brief statement, that would be perfect. We have a really great question here about technologies that may fall under multiple sectors. We ask for you to identify the primary sector to which your technology aligns, so where it might have the most benefit or where it's specifically intended. At the LOI stage, you would just have the opportunity to select that one industry. However, in the application, you're allowed an opportunity to select a secondary industry sector. And at that time, you would be able to select another industry sector from a greater list of where there may be benefit. However, if the technology has reach across multiple areas, knowing that at the LOI stage and at the application stage would be great information, but you wouldn't have to specifically select that. In terms of whether it would be appropriate for multiple submissions, it would depend on whether or not there was distinct technology development work. So if you were doing the same activities for one sector that you would be doing for another, then that would be considered one project. If they were 2 very separate or complementary but separate activities taking place by the organization in those different areas, then that may be appropriate for 2 separate submissions. And I mentioned that my team is always available for questions via crcf@cit.org. We also have prepared a FAQs document that's available for download. And as you're going through and preparing your LOI or your applications later on, you may find some additional information in that document to aid you in the process. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. You may find it helpful as you go through the process. I had also mentioned earlier that we'll be hosting a couple of additional webinars in December and January. The ones that are specific to the application process, we will be giving information on tips for creating successful proposals. So while we don't make available previous submissions that have been awarded or sample proposals, we will discuss during that webinar some of the tips that we have for how to create those best and strong proposals. So I encourage you to put that on your calendar and to register for those and learn what makes some of the best submissions that we've seen. I can't reiterate enough, crcf@cit.org. You can reach myself and other members of my team with any last-minute questions that may come to mind. And just to put in another reminder, December the 4th is the LOI deadline, and we'll look for anyone who's interested in submitting this solicitation. Make sure that you do submit that LOI to be eligible to submit an application. And if you have any other questions, you know how to reach us, and I really look forward to hearing from you and receiving your submissions. So thanks again for participating today, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon and a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thanks again.